markets, and he'll be back coming up the top of the hour with more where that came from, 2 p.m. Eastern time here on Bloomberg TV and radio. The delegation from Iran that is on the ground in New York to attend the United Nations General Assembly that we've been talking about today will not be able to enjoy the $1.50 hot dog at Costco. Indeed, guidance restrictions from the administration have gone out here. The State Department requiring Iranians traveling to the UN's big event here to obtain the government's permission before they shop at wholesale club stores like Costco or Walmart's Sam's Club. This is real. If they want to purchase luxury goods, according to a document on the Federal Register website, we will not allow the Iranian regime to allow its clerical elites to have a shopping spree in New York while the Iranian people endure poverty, crumbling infrastructure, and dire shortages of water and electricity, according to a State Department spokesman. This is normal. They're typically held to a radius around Columbus Circle, but apparently Costco in any neighborhood will be off limits. They have the small Costco's, James, I guess, in Manhattan. I didn't think that was a thing in New York. We bring Jeanne Zaino back into the conversation, Bloomberg Politics contributor, our Democratic analyst, following our conversation with the Latvian president. Jeanne, a lot of folks who were in that room, you just heard a very diplomatic conversation, are still recovering from some of the language that they heard from President Trump. Your countries are going to hell, the message today from the president, as we touched on briefly with yourself and Rick Davis earlier. What did you make of the reaction from the president of Latvia?
By the way, Joe, I am a proud member of Costco and BJ's.
Good
so
job.
We have some of those, although not directly in the city, to your point. I just didn't realize that that was a #1 shopping destination for Iranian diplomats visiting. So this is all new to me. I thought it was a really interesting conversation with the president, certainly diplomatic. I loved when he said that's what he gets paid for, and it's true. And I also, as an aside, like that he too uses the word unga, because that's always a debate this week. Is it unga? But I think #1, what was so important was that he said very explicitly that he does support the president when the president says that NATO members have got to stop buying oil, that this is critical. And of course, he said his country has cut back since the incursion by Russia. I think what I didn't hear from him is what kind of pressure can Donald Trump put on those NATO members that are spending the most? Because, of course, those are some of Donald Trump's closest alliances in NATO, including Viktor Orban in Hungary, Slovakia, Turkey. So I also, and certainly the president didn't say this, but was stunned to hear President Trump say during his speech that he only learned about these purchases 2 weeks ago. I'm assuming that that is not the case, but if it is, that is stunning to me because, of course, it's long been discussed.
I'm glad that you mentioned that. I couldn't believe that statement because it's something that we've been talking about since the beginning of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Not only did he say he just heard about it, he said that the European leaders couldn't believe that he found out. Jeanne, by the way, remarkable to hear the Latvian president, the first time I've heard another world leader refer to the Department of War here in the United States. I just mention it for what it's worth because I was surprised when he said it. President of the United States, that is, got into what was happening in London as well when he was talking about the impact of immigration on Europe, which is what generated the line, your countries are going to hell, that we played for you. He talked about the European continent invaded by a force of illegal aliens like no one has seen before, and suggested that London is moving towards Sharia law. There are people in the room who know that's not true, right?
Certainly, I hope that most, if not all of them, know that is not true. He had some really difficult words for the mayor, who there's no love lost between the two of them. But this is pure Donald Trump. And those of us who have long watched him, I was thinking during his speech, Joe, that if this had been 10 years ago and it was his first or second speech to the UN, I may have been stunned. But I think we have become so used to the way that Donald Trump talks. And this seemed a lot more like a MAGA speech than it did a speech at the UN, the kind that we are used to. And of course, this is what Donald Trump supporters love about him. He will go out and pretty much say anything. But of course, so much of what he says has to be fact checked. Certainly the issue of Sharia law. Rick mentioned before the issue of the wind turbines in China. I mean, the fact that he says he settled 7 wars. I mean, the list of fact checking that had to go on for that speech is very, very long. And when the camera panned to the faces in the audience, they were pretty much stone faced, and there was a lot less nervous giggling, I think, than we saw when Donald Trump first came to the UN.
I want to ask you about that. Remember, it was 2018 when he got a round of laughter as he was kind of boasting about his accomplishments. The president stopped and said, wow, I didn't expect that reaction. Everyone was being pretty honest, I think, on both sides of the speaker's rostrum that day. There was no laughing today outside of some of the jokes that he was making about Brazil and a few other things. What did you make of the reaction to the speech? You mentioned the dour looks on world leaders' faces. It was a very different room. We only have about a minute left, Jeannie. Speak to it.
Yeah, very different room. And the only applause I heard, and correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, was when he said release all the hostages, because obviously so many people in that room and elsewhere agree with that. But I think world leaders, like so many of us in the United States, are more used to Trump. They have figured out a way to deal with him. And I think they were prepared for this.
Absolutely. We're going to have a lot more on this, of course, meeting of the United Nations General Assembly in our late edition. Jeannie, thank you so much. Jeanne Zaino, Bloomberg Politics contributor and democracy visiting fellow at Harvard Kennedy School's Ash Center. Thanks as well to Rick Davis from Stone Court Capitol. I'm Joe Matthew in Washington. This is Bloomberg.